Well, honey, let me tell you about the most heartbreaking thing I've witnessed in my years living on Maple Street. You know me, I've got my morning coffee routine down to a science, and from my kitchen window, I can see pretty much everything that goes on in this neighborhood. Some folks call it nosy, I call it being a concerned neighbor. And boy, did I have reason to be concerned about what was happening next door with sweet Rebecca and that no-good husband of hers, Marcus. Rebecca Martinez, such a lovely girl, 29 years old with the prettiest auburn hair you ever did see, moved in next door about 8 years ago with Marcus Thompson. Now, Marcus seemed charming enough at first, I'll give him that. 31, tall, had one of those smiles that could fool you into thinking he was Prince Charming himself. But honey, if there's one thing I've learned in my years, it's that charm without substance is just manipulation wearing a pretty mask. From my kitchen window, and yes, I do spend a lot of time there, sue me, I watched their relationship unfold like a slow-motion car crash. At first, they seemed happy enough. I'd see them working in their little garden, Rebecca laughing at something Marcus said, him carrying groceries for her. Picture perfect, really. But Lord knows, the devil's in the details. The first red flag I noticed was about 4 years into them living here. Rebecca started looking tired. Not just regular tired, but that bone-deep exhaustion that comes from carrying too much weight on your shoulders. She'd come home from those long night shifts at St. Mary's Hospital, bless her heart, working as a nurse during all that chaos we've been through, and I'd watch her trudge to the mailbox like she was walking through quicksand. Meanwhile, Marcus? Well, let me tell you what I observed about Mr. Marcus Thompson. That man had more jobs than Elizabeth Taylor had husbands. I kept a little notebook. Don't judge me. It helps me keep track of who's who in the neighborhood. And by my count, he'd had 7 different jobs in the 3 years I was paying attention. 7. And between jobs? Well, honey, I'd see him through their living room window, playing those video games from morning till night while poor Rebecca was at the hospital saving lives. About 2 years ago, things really started going downhill for Rebecca. I noticed she was making more trips to the doctor. You can tell when someone's having medical issues if you know what to look for. The way she'd walk slower to her car, how she'd sometimes have to sit in her driveway for a few minutes before going inside. My heart just ached for her. Then came the surgeries. 3 of them in 1 year. I made it my business to know because, well, someone needed to be keeping an eye on that girl. She didn't have family nearby, and her mother-in-law Linda, lovely woman, by the way, nothing like her son, lived about an hour away. The first surgery was in February. I brought over a casserole, my famous tuna noodle, recipe passed down from my grandmother. And you know what I saw? Rebecca, barely 2 days out of surgery, doing laundry. With surgical staples still in her belly. And where was Marcus? Sitting on that couch with a gaming controller in his hands like he didn't have a care in the world. I marched right over there. Marcus Thompson, I said, using my stern voice that made my own children straighten up when they were little, your wife just had surgery and she's doing housework? He had the audacity to look surprised. Oh, she said she felt up to it, he said with that sheepish grin. I offered to help, but you know how independent she is. Independent, my foot. That girl was picking up his slack because he wouldn't step up to the plate. I could see it clear as day. The second surgery was worse. This time it was more serious. Something with her intestines and ovaries. Rebecca was out of work for 6 weeks, but did that stop her from taking care of that house? Not one bit. I'd peek over the fence and see her, moving like an old woman, hanging laundry on the line because Marcus forgot to switch it from the washer to the dryer. During this time, I started paying more attention to their comings and goings. Rebecca would leave for work at 6:30 p.m. sharp for her night shifts, working 5 or 6 days a week. 12-hour shifts. Can you imagine? And she was the one bringing home the bacon too. I could tell because she drove a reliable Honda while he drove some beat-up thing that spent more time in the shop than on the road. But Marcus? Well, let me tell you what I witnessed during his unemployment period. Every morning around 9 a.m., after Rebecca had gone to bed, he'd emerge from that house like he was on vacation. He'd go to the corner store, buy energy drinks and snacks, then come home and disappear into that spare room they'd turned into his gaming den. The lights would be on in there until 3 or 4 in the morning. I mentioned this to my friend Dolores at the grocery store. That boy's got no shame, she said, shaking her head. My nephew works at the unemployment office, and you know what he told me? They've got records of people who file for benefits, but never actually apply for jobs. Just milk the system while their spouses work themselves to death. Well, that got my blood boiling. Here was Rebecca, barely able to stand up straight some days from her health problems, working herself into the ground while Marcus played pretend job hunter. The third surgery happened in June, gallbladder this time. I knew because Linda mentioned it when she came to visit. That woman was a saint, always bringing food and checking on Rebecca. She'd stay for a few days each time, and let me tell you, the house ran like clockwork when Linda was there. Meals cooked, laundry done, everything spotless. But the minute she left, back to Rebecca doing everything while Marcus did nothing. It was after this surgery that I witnessed the fight that changed everything. Now, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but sound carries, especially on warm summer evenings when windows are open. I was watering my petunias on the front porch when I heard Rebecca's voice coming from their kitchen window. I can't do this anymore, Marcus. Her voice was strained, tired. I'm working myself to death, and you won't even apply for jobs I get you recommended for. The job market is terrible right now, he shot back. You don't understand how hard it is out there. Don't you dare. Rebecca's voice got stronger, and I found myself rooting for her. Don't you dare make excuses when I have connections who called me asking why you never followed up on interviews they set up for you. Well, butter my biscuit. I knew it. That boy had been lying about job hunting. The yelling continued for about 20 minutes, and by the end of it, Rebecca had given him an ultimatum: get a job by the end of the month or she was leaving. Guess what happened? Within a week, he was back at his old construction job. Funny how motivation works when your meal ticket threatens to disappear. Now, here's where things get really tragic, honey. Through the neighborhood grapevine, and by that I mean Linda, who confided in me during one of her visits, I learned that Marcus had been pressuring Rebecca to have children. Can you imagine? The poor girl could barely take care of herself and a grown man-child, and he wanted to add a baby to the mix? Linda was beside herself with worry. He keeps talking about wanting to be a father, she told me over coffee on my back porch. But Mel, that boy can't even remember to take out the trash without being reminded. How's he going to help with a baby? And Rebecca's health issues made pregnancy risky. I'm no doctor, but I've had 3 children of my own, and I know what I'm talking about when I say that woman's body was already fighting battles. Adding pregnancy to the mix would have been like throwing gasoline on a fire. But Marcus? He had it all figured out, according to what Linda overheard. His settlement money, some insurance payout from an accident years ago, would cover Rebecca's lost income while she was on bed rest. Never mind that his monthly check was less than what Rebecca made in a week. Men and their math, I swear. This is where the story takes a turn that made my blood pressure medication work overtime. It was a Tuesday evening in early July. Rebecca had just gotten home from work, and I was sitting on my porch enjoying the evening air when I heard Marcus's phone ringing inside their house. Now, normally I wouldn't pay attention to such things, but the conversation that followed was, well, let's just say it was impossible to ignore. Hey, gorgeous, I heard Marcus say in a voice I'd never heard him use with Rebecca. My antenna went up immediately. I missed you too. Yeah, she's working nights this week. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Well, I nearly dropped my sweet tea. I crept closer to the fence, my heart pounding. This couldn't be what I thought it was, could it? I know it's complicated, he continued. But I told you, once we figure out how to handle the Rebecca situation, we can be together properly. The settlement money isn't much, but it'll be enough to start over somewhere. Oh, honey, the rage that filled my chest could have powered the whole neighborhood. This snake was cheating on that sweet girl while she was working herself to death to support them both. But it got worse. So much worse. What do you mean you're late? Marcus's voice changed, got urgent. How late? Are you sure? Okay, don't panic. We'll figure this out. I had to sit down on my porch steps. This fool had gotten another woman pregnant while his wife was recovering from surgery and working 6 days a week to keep them afloat. The next few days were torture. I kept watching Rebecca, wondering if she knew, if she suspected. She looked tired, more tired than usual, and I caught her sitting in her car in the driveway a few times, just staring at nothing. My heart was breaking for her. Meanwhile, Marcus was acting stranger than usual. He'd get phone calls and step outside to take them, walking to the far end of their yard. He started going out more in the evenings, claiming he was networking for better job opportunities. I debated whether to tell Rebecca what I'd overheard. Lord knows, I've never been one to keep my mouth shut when someone needs to know something important. But before I could work up the courage, the whole thing came crashing down in the most dramatic way possible. It was a Saturday morning, and I was having my coffee when I saw Rebecca come outside to get the mail. She was moving slowly, still recovering from that gallbladder surgery, when a car I didn't recognize pulled into their driveway. Out stepped a young woman, maybe early 20s, with a very obvious baby bump. She marched right up to Rebecca, and even from my kitchen window, I could see this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. "Are you Mrs. Thompson?" the girl asked. Rebecca nodded, looking confused. "I'm Chanel," the girl said. "And your husband is the father of my baby." "Well, honey, you could have knocked me over with a feather." Rebecca just stood there, mail in her hand, staring at this girl like she was speaking a foreign language. The whole story came tumbling out right there in the driveway. Marcus had met Chanel at a bar during one of his work trips. They'd been seeing each other for months. He'd told her that his marriage was over, that he was just staying for financial reasons until he could figure out how to leave without losing everything. But here's the kicker. Chanel was 5 months pregnant. 5 months. That meant this affair had been going on during Rebecca's second surgery, while she was flat on her back recovering and he was supposed to be taking care of her. Rebecca didn't say a word through the whole confession. She just stood there, getting paler and paler, until finally she dropped the mail and ran into the house. Marcus came home about an hour later to find Chanel's car still in the driveway and Rebecca waiting for him on the front porch with a suitcase. From my vantage point, I could see everything. "What's she doing here?" he demanded, pointing at Chanel. "She's here to tell me about your baby," Rebecca said in a voice so calm it was scary. "The baby you made while I was recovering from surgery. The baby you made while I was working 6 days a week to support us because you were too lazy to get a job." What followed was the most spectacular takedown I've ever witnessed. Rebecca had clearly spent that hour getting her facts straight, and she laid into him with the precision of a surgeon. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" she asked. "Did you think I was so stupid, so beaten down, that I'd never figure out why you suddenly wanted to open our marriage? It wasn't about our sex life, was it, Marcus? It was because you'd already been cheating and needed a way to make it legitimate." The polyamory conversation. It all made sense now. That snake had been trying to manipulate Rebecca into agreeing to an open marriage to cover up his affair. But Rebecca wasn't done. And the baby conversation? "You weren't trying to start a family with me. You were trying to figure out how to have me raise your affair baby while making it look like the noble thing to do." Marcus tried to deny it, tried to explain, but Chanel, bless her heart, had brought receipts. Text messages, photos, hotel receipts. This girl had documented everything, thinking she was helping the man she loved leave his wife. Instead, she'd handed Rebecca everything she needed for the divorce. The next few days were like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. Marcus moved out that same day, slinking off to his mother's property with his tail between his legs. Linda came by to apologize to Rebecca, bringing more casseroles and staying for several days to help sort through the mess Marcus had left behind. But the real drama was just beginning. See, Chanel had been under the impression that Marcus had money. Real money. He'd told her about the settlement, made it sound like he was independently wealthy and just working for fun. When she found out the truth, that he was essentially unemployed and living off his wife's income, well, let's just say she wasn't as understanding as she'd been when she thought she was getting a sugar daddy. The girl started calling the house at all hours, demanding that Marcus step up and support her and the baby. She'd driven from 2 states away thinking she was going to have this fairy tale life with him, and instead found out he was just another deadbeat who couldn't even support himself. But here's where karma really started working her magic. Remember how Marcus had been lying about looking for work during his unemployment? Well, it turns out the state has ways of tracking that kind of thing. Someone, And I'm not saying it was me, but someone might have made a call to the unemployment fraud hotline with some very specific information about a certain Marcus Thompson who'd been collecting benefits while not actually seeking employment. Suddenly, Marcus found himself owing the state about $15,000 in fraudulent claims. And since he'd just lost his sugar mama and his settlement money barely covered his basic expenses, he was in a world of financial trouble. Chanel, meanwhile, was having a very difficult pregnancy. Stress, it turns out, is not good for expectant mothers. She ended up on bed rest at 6 months, unable to work, with no support from the baby's father, who was now facing fraud charges and living in a trailer on his mother's property. I felt bad for the girl, I really did. She'd been manipulated just as much as Rebecca had, in her own way. Linda, being the saint she is, actually reached out to Chanel's family to let them know what was happening. Turns out, Chanel had told them she was engaged to a successful businessman and had been sending them photos of Marcus in front of Rebecca's house and car, making it look like he was well off. When her family found out the truth, they came to collect their daughter faster than you could say, shotgun wedding. But not before Chanel had one more surprise for Marcus. She'd been keeping track of all the money she'd spent traveling to see him, all the expenses he'd promised to reimburse. Hotel rooms, gas money, meals, maternity clothes she'd bought thinking she was going to be playing house with him. It added up to about $8,000, and she took him to small claims court for every penny. Meanwhile, Rebecca was going through her own journey. The divorce proceedings were moving quickly since Marcus didn't have money for a lawyer and Rebecca had documented everything meticulously. She was getting the house, the savings, and wouldn't have to pay alimony since Marcus had demonstrated his ability to work but chose not to. But the emotional toll was severe. I watched that poor girl lose weight she couldn't afford to lose, saw her coming home from work and just sitting in her car for long periods before going inside. Some days, I'd find excuses to go check on her, bringing over extra vegetables from my garden, asking to borrow a cup of sugar I didn't need, just to make sure she was okay. Linda became a godsend during this time. She'd come stay for long weekends, helping Rebecca sort through 8 years of accumulated belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate. I'd see them working in the garden together, Linda teaching Rebecca how to preserve vegetables, giving her something positive to focus on. She's stronger than she knows, Linda told me during one of our coffee chats. Marcus never deserved her. I raised that boy, and I know his flaws better than anyone. I just hoped marriage would mature him, but some people never grow up. The divorce was finalized in September, just 3 months after Chanel's dramatic revelation. Rebecca kept her maiden name professionally, but legally went back to it entirely. Marcus was ordered to pay court costs and had to sign over his portion of the house for significantly less than it was worth since he needed quick cash to pay his legal debts. Chanel gave birth in October to a baby girl. Marcus wasn't there for the birth. He was working a double shift at the construction site, trying to earn money to pay his various debts. The baby was healthy, thank God, but the situation was far from ideal. Chanel's family had taken her back, but they weren't exactly thrilled about the circumstances. They were good people who helped their daughter, but they made it clear that Marcus wasn't welcome in their lives. When he tried to establish paternity rights, they fought him in court, arguing that he'd shown no financial responsibility and had defrauded the government. The paternity test confirmed what everyone already knew, but Marcus's parental rights were limited to supervised visitation due to his financial instability and history of fraud. He was ordered to pay child support, which was calculated based on his minimum wage construction job income. Here's the beautiful part. Between the child support, the money he owed the state for unemployment fraud, the settlement he had to pay Chanel for her expenses, and his regular living costs, Marcus was making barely enough to survive. No more video games all day. No more playing house while someone else paid the bills. Real consequences for his actions. But the story doesn't end there, honey. Oh no, there's one more twist that proves karma has a sense of humor. In November, about a month after the baby was born, Rebecca ran into Marcus at the grocery store. She told Linda about it later, and Linda shared it with me over our regular coffee chat. Marcus looked terrible, thin, exhausted, older than his 31 years. He tried to apologize to Rebecca, told her he knew he'd messed up everything and wondered if there was any chance. Rebecca looked at him and said, "Marcus, I hope you figure out how to be a good father to your daughter. She deserves better than what you gave me." Then she walked away. But here's the kicker. Rebecca had been glowing. Healthy, happy, more vibrant than I'd seen her in years. She'd started eating better, sleeping more, had even started dating a lovely doctor from her hospital. A real man who appreciated her strength and supported her career. Marcus, on the other hand, looked like he'd aged 10 years in 6 months. Turns out, living in a trailer while working construction and having most of your paycheck garnished for various debts tends to wear on a person. It's been 8 months since the divorce was finalized, and I'm happy to report that Rebecca is thriving. She bought out Marcus's half of the house and has turned it into exactly what she wants. She's got a beautiful garden now, has 2 cats that adore her, and that lovely boyfriend David comes around on weekends to help with home improvement projects. She's also started a support group at the hospital for healthcare workers dealing with chronic illness and divorce. Linda told me Rebecca said she wanted to help other women who might be in similar situations, trapped in relationships where they're giving everything and getting nothing back. Marcus? He's still living in that trailer, still working construction, still trying to rebuild his life. His visitation with his daughter is going well, according to Linda, and Chanel has been allowing him more time as he's proven he can be responsible. Maybe fatherhood will be the thing that finally makes him grow up. Only time will tell. Chanel ended up moving back to her home state with the baby, but she maintains a cordial relationship with Linda, who sends care packages and stays in touch. That woman has a heart of gold. She's essentially become a grandmother to a baby her son fathered through an affair, but she doesn't let Marcus's mistakes affect her relationship with her granddaughter. "You know, honey, I've seen a lot of drama in my years on this street, but this situation taught me something important. Sometimes people get so used to being taken advantage of that they forget they deserve better." Rebecca spent so many years carrying the weight of that relationship by herself that she almost forgot she was strong enough to walk away. And Marcus? He's a cautionary tale about what happens when you take good people for granted. He had a woman who loved him, worked herself nearly to death for him, supported him through job loss after job loss, and he threw it away for what? A fling with a young girl who didn't even really know him? I still wave to him when I see him visiting his mother. I'm not heartless. We all make mistakes. But some mistakes have consequences that last a lifetime, and Marcus is learning that lesson the hard way. Rebecca stops by sometimes to chat over the fence, usually when she's working in her garden. She looks peaceful now, content in a way she never did when she was married to Marcus. Last week, she told me she's thinking about going back to school to become a nurse practitioner. "I want to help people," she said, pruning her rose bushes. "But I also want to make sure I never have to depend on anyone else to take care of me again." Smart girl. That's exactly the lesson she should have learned from all this. As for me, well, I'm still here, still watching from my kitchen window, still ready to lend a casserole or an ear when my neighbors need it. Some folks might call it being nosy, but I prefer to think of it as being invested in my community. After all, we're all just trying to get through this life the best we can, and sometimes we need someone to witness our struggles and celebrate our victories. Rebecca's victory over Marcus Thompson might not have made the evening news, but from where I sit on Maple Street, it was the most important story of the year. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well, and honey, Rebecca Martinez is living very well indeed. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like hers, remember what she learned. You teach people how to treat you, and if you don't value yourself, why should anyone else? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away, even when it breaks your heart. Because a broken heart heals, but a spirit that's been crushed by someone who doesn't appreciate your worth? That takes much longer to recover. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go water my petunias. And maybe peek over the fence to see how Rebecca's new vegetable garden is coming along. Purely for neighborly purposes, of course.